This is a software demonstration to demonstrate how to use the analysis tool pack to just compute some basic descriptive statistics with data. In other words, averages and means or averages and standard deviations and so forth. And I've started to record about a half a dozen times and messed it up each time. So I hope I get it right this time. And if I don't, if I've got mistakes, they're just going to stay in here. So anyway, I've got a spreadsheet here that has some data in it, and this data represents house sales in Seattle, Washington, in a particular zip code. So each column is a different attribute of a sale, and each row represents a different house that was sold. And in particular, I want to look at the price and get some information about prices of houses in this particular zip code. So the first thing I want to do is go to the Data tab, and once I click that, I have my data analysis tools showing over here on the right. So I'm going to select that, and there's a whole bunch of choices here, and the one that I want to choose has already been chosen, looks like. Descriptive Statistics. So now I have a window that allows me to enter the range of the data, and unfortunately it was already entered, so let's pretend that it wasn't. The range of the data that I want to analyze, and also where to put the output and what output to compute. So let's enter the range of the data. So that would be column C, and you notice I included the header at the top of the column, and here is the entire range of that data. And since I included the header, I need to tell it that that very first row is not actually data. That's a label that says price, so it needs to know that. And then next, it asks me where to put the output. I can put it on this same spreadsheet, and it'll just be a bunch of numbers that you can use in computations and so forth. So if you want to put it on this same tab of this spreadsheet, you would pick the output range option here. I'm going to leave it with the new worksheet. In other words, it's going to add another tab to this workbook, or you could actually put it in another workbook. So that way I don't have to even worry about how many rows and columns I need to put the data, and it'll be in a nice clean thing, and then I'll label the tab to remind me later where it's located. So then it's going to ask me what it is I want to compute. Well, I want the summary statistics. That says compute the average and the standard deviation and some other things that I will show you. And then it next says, do you want a confidence level on the mean? I don't. The confidence level on the mean would be when I sample from some population and want to estimate the mean of the population. In other words, I have maybe a small sample of voters, and I've asked them who they're going to vote for, and then I want a confidence interval for all the voters, and I need to make that inference. In this case, I don't have that to worry about. I have all the houses that were sold, and that's what I want to know. So the mean is the mean. I don't need a confidence interval. And then it allows me to compute the largest one and the smallest one, or rather than the very largest one, I could say find the 100th largest one or the 100th smallest one. In this case, I'll just say, give me the largest and the smallest. And then I'm all ready to compute those statistics. And here they're shown on another tab. And the first thing I would want to do is to rename that tab so that later I'll know where to find it. And this is just standard Excel information here, so I can do things like reformat it so that it looks nice, and since these are dollars, I'll change the format so that we're looking at currency. And then I'll can use this. I can pretty up this. I could, do some nice borders around it if I wanted to, and so forth. Now let's look at the information that I computed. By the way, by leaving that label on, I got price up here at the top, so that's nice, and I've already got me a nice pretty table started here that I could put in a report. So let's talk about some of the numbers. The mean, that's the average. So the average price of these houses was $280,000 and $280,805. And the next piece of information is useless in this particular situation. It is the standard error on the estimate of the mean. We know the mean. We got all the data. If I had taken a sample of 30 houses that were sold out of 300, and that's the only ones I had the information for, and I could argue that that 30 was representative of the entire population, then I would need to know that. So that piece of information there is not something I even want to include in my report, let's say. The median. The median is the one right in the middle. That means that half of the houses sold for less than $260,000 and half sold for more than $260,000. And you notice that's different from the average. Sometimes the median is more descriptive of the population, because a few big values, a few $850,000 houses will skew this average, but they will have very little effect on the median. The mode is the number that occurred most often, had the highest count. So there were more houses that sold at $250,000 than any other price. And then the standard deviation, you know what that means. That tells you the range or the spread of the prices. And our rule of thumb is if you add 3 of these, which is about $100,000 to the average, that would sort of give you the upper range. So 300,000 plus 280,000 would be about 580,000. That should include most of the houses that were sold. And then the variance is here, and you see that's a really big number, and that's going to be something very important to talk about later, but for right now it's just the square of the standard deviation. Kurtosis and skewness, those are numbers you don't want to worry about at this point. They actually tell you whether or not the curve looks bell-shaped or not. The range is $750,000. In other words, the most expensive house and the least expensive house, the difference was $750,000. The least expensive house was $100,000. The most expensive was $850,000. So if you're going to accept a job in Seattle, you need to make sure they give you a really good offer, because it's going to cost you a lot to live there. And then the sum of all of those prices is not particularly interesting here. This tells us that there were 62 houses sold, and the largest was 850,000. The smallest was 100,000. So those are summary statistics that you can get, and most of these you can compute using Excel functions. It's just nice to be able to get them all in a nice table. So that ends this little session. I'm going to do another one later that shows you how to do a histogram of those prices.